And so the structure in itself, 8 single-member districts and 3 at-large, was indeed very flawed. It was elitist, and it was exclusive. It was racist. And so we had to move to another structure, because what happened here is that you had 3 members who were elected at large, meaning citywide. And what that says is that and all of them came from North Dallas. You had 3 at large, and then out of the 8, you had 2 to 3. That's my point I'm making. And so at any point in time, the individuals or the council could generate 6 votes for North Dallas, and that's what happened. And so it's very important to recognize that 8-3 was not a system that served all the citizens, but instead it primarily was a system that served one portion of town, one part of town, and that was North Dallas. And so we had to move to eliminate really the 3 at large to the extent that we could. The 3 at large, once again, at large being members who were elected citywide. I mean, we had to confront the system. And so we had to, in essence, we had to create chaos within the Dallas City Hall. And so, because we knew that the structure didn't serve us. We both, really, Councilman Lipscomb and I, both came from the activists, the organizing experience in history. And so we didn't have any problems creating the chaos, confronting the system, or as you put it, assaulting the system, because it simply did not serve those people who elected us. Al and I began, Councilmember Lipscomb and I began to talk about how terrible it was. And so what I did was really, I approached Marvin Crenshaw. And I asked him if he would file a lawsuit against the city of Dallas. There were people now who many of whom did not, I'm talking about council members, who did not support a 14 single-member districts and 1 at large. They did not support a single-member district. It's important to note that that a coalition was formed to create single-member districts. It was a coalition that was formed with the Latino community. At that time, it was Diane Ragsdale. And also a coalition formed with members of the Anglo community led by Joan Smotzer. And so we formed a coalition, and that's very important, because we got to acknowledge that it was a movement by a number of people from different walks of life. And so we went to court. And we while the movement contributed to 14-1, I'm talking about the organizing, the protests, Al and I elevating the issue at the council level, Marvin and Roy acting as the plaintiffs. All of this was critical, but we cannot forget, at the end of the day, it was Judge Buckmeyer who said this city would have a single-member district system with 1 at large. Okay, it was that final conclusion. So we got to, and then of course at the end of the day we got to talk about the lawyers as well, Bessie Julian and Mike Daniel. And so all of these different things together, the legal component working with the political component, the political component working with the activism and the activist component, with all of these different elements together. And I think that has to be conveyed to our young, that the lawyers simply cannot do it by themselves, and you should not allow them to dictate your movement. But you need to have your activists as well and your organizers. So anyway, and within this given setting, moving toward 14 single member districts and one at large, you certainly did have, as I indicated, activists / organizers. I mean, we heightened that issue in the streets. I mean, we had ongoing protests. And then, of course, you had the plaintiffs themselves who participated in the activism, who were a part of the activist movement. And then you had the legal arm. One thing about single member districts is that not only did it eliminate the at-large system, the citywide system, meaning with the exception of the mayor, but you also, you know, it served white people. I mean, because there are many people who serve on this council today simply would not be able to be elected at large, citywide. And so when you look at people from East Dallas or from Pleasant Grove, when you look at the Councilmember Callahan, with all due respect, he couldn't win at large. If you look at many of the single member districts I maintain many other of single member districts who are Anglo, I can name several, who simply could not win at large. And so it really benefited them as well. It benefited not only Latinos, because Latinos began to become elected too. You know, they're elected primarily because of 14-1. They were not elected prior to then. Of course, you had Mr. Al Gonzalez, who was elected at large. He was one of the citywide members. And then, of course, you had some previous at-large city Latinos. But my point, though, when you're elected citywide, you don't have the money, you don't have the resources to do that, and also you tend to be controlled and directed by those who elected you, meaning the citywide, primarily North Dallas. So the single member districts 14-1 really benefited Anglos as well, and Latinos and African Americans. One thing about single member districts, what it does is that it really not only benefits all of us, including Anglos, in particular those Anglos who would have never been elected citywide, but also you have people, the single member district system creates smaller districts. And so therefore it brings the government closer to the people. And that's very important. When you have the government that's closer to the people, it promotes and enhances participatory democracy. And so that is important that people realize that it benefited the general public. You know what? I was so proud and I was so glad that I, in my opinion, was a part of that which was really a major victory for this city. You should be involved for a variety of reasons, for things that directly affect your life. So when you turn on the lights, you need to think about politics. You need to think about elected officials. The electricity is controlled ultimately by elected officials. When you drink a glass of water or go to the hydrant, I mean, Dallas City Hall, the Dallas Water Department determine what the rate is going to be. And so, I mean, in the city council determines ultimately how much we're going to pay for streets and sanitation along with the water. And also when you're complaining about when you don't have a good encounter with the police department, you need to think about politics, because the police department is controlled by elected officials. And so when you want to go out and play play ball at a park, you want to say, why isn't this park clean? I mean, why don't we have more trees? Why don't we have more benches? I mean, you need to think about politics, because or elected officials, because elected officials ultimately control the parks and rec. And so my point, though, is, and then when you think about, the cost of education, beyond high school. I mean, you got to think about politics. Or many of our students attend public schools. That's controlled by politicians, ultimately controlled by elected officials. And so my point I'm making here is that the reason why they should be involved is because politics, voting in politics, control their day-to-day lives. There are things, everything you can think of, I can ultimately trace back to an elected official or politics. And so people need to realize that it's connected to your day-to-day life, and that's what happens. And that's what people, many times people don't vote because they don't see the connection to their lives, to their day-to-day lives. And so anyway, so that's one thing I would share with them, that you've got to understand that all of that electoral politics, voting, all of which is controlled by elected officials. And your life, your day-to-day life is controlled by elected officials. Because many of our youth don't see the need to vote, but I maintain the reason that they don't see the need to vote, youth and young adults, that they don't see the need to vote, because we just simply have done a poor job connecting politics and voting to their day-to-day lives.